Okay, good afternoon. So today and on Friday, we'll carry on looking at Parfit's personal identity article. And after that, we'll be through on personal identity, and we'll move on to look at questions about free will and agency. I hope you've been able to look at the Parfit article. Have you looked at the Parfit article? Some of you? Yep. I think, is this right? I think most people's experience of it is that there's one level in which it's an extremely clear article that as you read it sentence by sentence, every little bit you zoom in on is absolutely clear what he's saying. But it's kind of like pop art in that everything you look at, yeah, you know what that is. But then you step back and say, but what is going on here? And you think, well, I really do not know what the genre is here, what all this is about. So what I want to do is start out with one way of thinking of what he's up to in the article, give a kind of model for what he's trying to do. And I think a way to think of it is that it's a kind of critique of self-interest. And the interesting and original thing that he's doing is what kind of critique of self-interest it is. I mean, any preacher, any person can tell you that you ought not to be so selfish, that we all focus too much on ourselves and so on. That's a kind of easy thing to say, an easy thing for anyone to say, and it usually carries very little weight. The reason it carries very little weight is that self-interest is just so central to our ordinary concerns. And that if you think about the concern to survive, the concern that you should make it, that's so fundamental, so deep in all of us, that the idea that you should think of your own life as just one among many is so alien that it's not really imaginable that an ordinary human, could take up that kind of stance. The question is, how can we still keep anything like our ordinary motivations while having any kind of critique of self-interest? When self-interest is so key to everything we do, I mean, it's key because just the most elementary kind of responsibility says you have a kind of responsibility for your own life that you usually don't have for anyone else's. So much of what you're responsible for, that we ordinarily take people to be responsible for, is their own life. So of course we've got to have people looking out for themselves. But you can make a distinction here between two kinds of critique of something that we value in our society. One is you can have a radical attack. A radical attack is something that comes like from Mars, that comes from outside the way that humans usually live and the things that we ordinarily care about, and says we ought not to have anything to do with self-interest. My death, that's not any more important than anyone else's. We should all think like that. That's so alien that it's hard to know how you could go about taking up that attitude. But Parfit's critique here is quite different. He's saying, let's not directly criticize self-interest. Let's say, what is it that you're concerned about when you're concerned about yourself? What's the content of self-interest? And I was trying to think of an analogy, and here's what I think might be an analogy. Suppose you live in some humble village where the baptism of a child is a big thing, is greeted with a lot of ceremony, a lot of cost. So the elders have to be present, and the newborn is named, and in this elaborate ceremony, initiated into the village. And let's suppose it's not a religious practice. Let's suppose it's not that some holy book tells you this is what you do with newborns. It's just this is the way it has always been in the village. Well, suppose that you are a young radical freethinker in the village, and you want to critique the ancient ceremony. How would you go about it? Well, one kind of critique would be to say, this whole business of the way we treat newborn children is a lot of nonsense. The radical critique says, this whole business of parenting is suspect. We should be growing the children in test tubes, growing them optimally in test tubes, and sending them off into the desert in order to make sure that only the tough survive. Weed out the feeble. That's my approach to parenting. And if that's your take, right, if that's your radical critique, well, baptism has no place, right? I mean, we're not going to take the test tubes into the font and all that kind of stuff. So that would be a radical critique that says the whole way you think about this stuff from start to finish is a mistake. That's the analogy of saying, forget about self-interest altogether. Just do it from scratch and say that everyone counts for the same as everyone else. You can make that case. It might be very cleverly argued. It will have no uptake because it has no connect to our ordinary motivations. You're trying to critique the practice from this detached perspective that just leaves behind ordinary human emotions, ordinary human concerns. But another thing you could do if you're a free thinker wanting to review the baptism ceremony is you could say, why is it that we care about the baptism ceremony? Why do we do this? What's the point of it? What are we up to when we do this? You could say, well, really when you think about what we value here is not the ceremony itself. It's the celebration of the birth of the child, including the child in our community. These things are what really matter. And when you pinpoint what it is that we actually care about, you see that the actual ceremony is neither here nor there. The ceremony is actually irrelevant. The important things are these things to do with the community. So that way of critiquing it isn't to say, let's start from scratch. It says, let's keep in place the structure of the concerns that we already have, but try and pinpoint just what we do care about and what we don't. Try and identify what would really matter for our concerns and what doesn't. And the trouble with a radical critique is, suppose you do marriage, suppose you're just pure spirit, you're just really not in ordinary space so far as your motivations go, and you reach some detached perspective from which everyone counts for the same as everyone else, parenting is of no particular value, children are of no particular value, then if you reach that perspective, then what do you care about anything? And you have no idea how to go about evaluating positively or negatively any proposal about how to live. So a radical critique of self-interest, a radical attack on self-interest that just lays behind our ordinary emotions, it also, if you move far enough into outer space when you're criticizing what people do, all you find is that you don't have a standpoint from which to evaluate, to justify or criticize what actually is going on. Parfit's saying, don't directly challenge self-interest. Just ask, what is it you're concerned about when you're concerned about the self? The question is, what are the concerns that drive us? If you're concerned about your own death, just to take the simplest, most dramatic example of self-interest, where you say, I promise you if I say, just for the sake of, just for the pedagogical value of the thing, at the end of this class, we always kill one student just to sharpen up the rest. And what is the first question? Why isn't this guy in jail? No. The first question is it going to be me? I hope it's not me, right? There isn't some generation thing here. You would naturally think, well, I hope it's not me, right? If you're told we're going to take just one and shoot you. Yeah? It would be pedagogically so valuable. Is there a case there? Well, it's like, wait a minute. It only just occurred to me that it's not a bad idea. But anyway, right. If you try to take up a perspective where you say, with that kind of question, but will it be me? That gets no traction. I don't care about that. Everyone counts for one. No one counts for more than one. That's a position that's so alien to our ordinary motivations that we can't find there some way of thinking about the world that would be of any, that could connect to our understanding of what's practically significant and what isn't. So instead, we're just going to say, what is it that I'm concerned about when I say, but will it be me? What's really driving me? Okay, so much for just what I think the genre is of what Parfit's doing. Is that plain as day? Is what that kind of contrast is? It'll probably come into focus more when we look at the example. So, when Parfit's talking about fission, or as someone talked about it earlier in the class, people talked about this earlier as printing off. You can just print off copies of the original person. Then, the reason for thinking about this is to help us pinpoint what really matters to us about ordinary survival. Just as in the baptism case, you could say, well, imagine if we did it this way. Imagine we did it outside the usual structures. What would we get then? That's a kind of thought experiment where you could say, would I still be getting everything I care about in the original ceremony? If you think about printing off, people fissioning, would I still get what I really care about in ordinary survival? Well, if you're told you're going to fission, there's going to be psychological continuity along each branch of the fission. What I mean is, the memories that are there along each branch of the fission will all causally depend on what came earlier. But as someone said last time, the offshoots in that fission case, they're not identical to each other because there are three people there, not one. This was your question. They can't all be identical to the original because the original is only one person, not three people. So they can't all be identical to each other because there are clearly three. Wait a minute, They can't all be identical to each other at the end because there are clearly really three. They can't all be identical to the original because if they were all identical to the original, they'd be identical to each other. And there's no basis for saying that one of them, rather than any of the others, is identical to the original. Therefore, the original ceased to exist. Right? I think we got to that last time. Is that plain as day? Any questions about that? So you have that connectedness, that causal connection up each branch, but you don't have identity with the original. The great philosopher David Lewis argued the other way. He said, that's not true. You can think of a person as a set of person stages. That is to say, thin time slices of a person. And you can consider the set of slices that go up the right limb and down to include the base, up the middle limb and down to include the base, and up the left limb and down to include the base. These are three different sets. Yes? Are there any mathematicians here? These are different sets, right? Yes? Yeah. Kind of like development stages, yeah. What I mean is like 5-minute stages. Yeah. So since I came into the room, there was a 5-minute stage when I set up the projector. There was a 5-minute stage when I started talking. Then, or there was a 5-minute stage when you looked for your seat. 5 minutes. You see what I mean? 5-minute stage when you got set up. 5-minute stage when you thought, by God, he's not going to be late again. That kind of thing. Yeah. So you got all these stages, right? That's all the stages. Yeah. So then there's fission. Yep. And so there's stages up here and stages up here. Yes? That's all right? Follow me very closely here. If you think in terms of a person as a collection of stages like this, all these stages are causally connected to one another, right? This one's causing that one, causing that one, causing that one, causing that one, causing that one. Yep. Yes? They're all causally connected. If you think of it like that, what's a person? A person is a set of person stages. Yes? But is any old set of person stages a person? If you took just one 5-minute stage, would that be a person? No, that is too small. That is just a part of a person. You see what I mean? That is just a bit of a person. Otherwise, as you and I are talking right now, all these people will be coming into existence and going out of existence, and that is not what's happening, I think. Yep, yep. Yeah, there'll be different stages up here. Yeah, these ones would be physically distinct from these ones. Yeah, yeah. So then, what you want for a person to be is for a person would be a big set of person stages. You'd want a person to be the biggest set of person stages that constituted a person. So if you just took this here, that wouldn't be a person because there's a bit left out. Yeah. So, but if you took this, that would be a person. That would be a total set of person stages, a maximal set of person stages. That's all right? So that's one set of person stages. That's one maximal set of person stages. Does that make sense? Put your hand up if that makes sense. Very good. Okay, well, if that makes sense, then what about this? I say this too is a person. That's another maximal set of person stages. Yes? Okay, and they kind of overlap. But they're different because they're different total sets. They're different members at the top here. Yep, yep. These are not options. These are not possibilities. That's what I meant about the science fiction thing about walking two different ways at once. Yep. So it's like that. These are two actual people, two different actual people that you got here at the end of it. Yep. Okay. So, and I said, this might medically happen. You might be told, well, since Chernobyl, it happens more and more often that people fission. Yep. Okay. So this is persons. This is one person. This is a different person. This is lefty here, and this is righty. So suppose this is you, right? And and you're told in a year you're going to fission. Then in a year there will be this set of person stages over here, that set of person stages over there. So how many person in your seat right now? Then how many people are there? One. That is the wrong answer. There are two. Because look, what's in your seat right now is just this intersection bit. Yeah? There's a member of both sets. So, on this analysis, there are actually two people sitting in your chair right now. Yes? There could be a million. I mean, if fission really... it's fission amps up. You get kind of Moore's law for fission. Every year, you get twice as many fission products as you did the previous year. Yeah, in a few years you'd have a million. Yep. Yes? Well, I guess he does. Yeah, I guess he has to. Yeah, it's a bit of a person. Yeah. It kind of goes round and round. Yeah. No, that's right. That's a real problem. Is that more basic than the notion of a person? Yeah. That is like a basic puzzle for this approach. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah, very good. Yes, let's have righty fission. Yep. Right? Very good. Yes. That's right. Yep. Yep. The original hasn't ceased to exist. There would now be four people sitting in your chair. Yep. And if lefty does the same, it would be, wait a minute, am I counting this right? 1, 2, no, it would be 3. If lefty fission's the same. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so
Yeah.
righty is also not the same anymore?
Well, there's righty 1 and righty 2. Well, actually, yeah, there's righty 1 and righty 2. These are 2 different total sets. Yep. This is not a popular view. I'm just... yeah, as so often with Professor Lewis's views, the reaction is generally being greeted with as brilliant but unsound. Yeah. You haven't branched yet? Yes, right. You're still on the bottom, but the point is that a person is a maximal set of person stages. But the maximum, I mean, the maximum reaches all the way to your death. To death, yeah. Yeah, that's a person from birth to death. That maximal set of person stages. Yeah. So you get deaths up here and up here and up here. So you get 3 different people all sitting in the same chair at the same time. Anyway, I just mentioned that as a view you might find attractive if you if you didn't like the idea that in this kind of scenario the original person has ceased to exist, then a way of getting out of that would be to say, no, the original person is still continuing to exist because there were in fact 3 people there all along. You see what I mean? So that beats the logic of that kind of argument. The argument there was they can't all be identical to each other, therefore they can't all be identical to the original, because if they were identical to the original, they'd be identical to each other. But if there were actually 3 people there in the first place, then you could defeat that argument. Yes? He's against this argument. Yeah. That's right. These 3 all continue to exist. Yeah. Yeah. I think this is generally thought to be a crazy view. I don't know if that's an argument. That was Lewis's point, actually. Thinking it's a crazy view is not an argument against my position. But you haven't really understood it unless you think it's a crazy view. Okay. But anyway, I mean that just as a kind of exercise. The important thing here is, what's the definition of identity? If we got this far, we got it that identity has something to do with psychological continuity. That in this case of the prince and the cobbler, then the natural idea was that if there's psychological continuity between the earlier prince and the later cobbler, then you say the prince has moved body. And a couple of sessions ago I said, well, you can define this, you can say, you can define it in terms of quasi-memory. You can say that the later person is identical to the earlier person if the overwhelming majority of the later person's memory impressions causally derive from what the earlier person saw and did. Yeah? You remember that? That was that stuff about brain slides and so on. Yeah? Okay. But the thing is that in these fission scenarios, you've got that across all 3 branches. The later memories are caused, the overwhelming majority of the later person's memories are caused by what the original person saw and did up all 3 branches, and you still haven't got identity by this argument. Yep. So what's going wrong? You got branching. So identity is when you have psychological continuity without branching. That's the definition. We just kind of reached that at this point in the discussion. Yeah. So what you can say is the later person is identical to the earlier person if the overwhelming majority of the later person's memory impressions are caused in the right kind of way by what the earlier person saw and did. And there wasn't any branching. If there was branching, then you don't have identity. If there wasn't branching, then you do have identity. Put your hand up if that just seems I hope this seems straightforward at this point. Does that seem fairly straightforward? If that seems pretty puzzling? If you got off the bus a long time ago? Okay. So you can say that in general. We were talking about the identity of a lectern or the identity of a stool. You can say what makes the stool the same concrete object as the stool earlier is that there's a causal connection between the way the stool was earlier and the way the stool was now. But then you've got to add, and there isn't any branching. If the stool branched, then it wouldn't have been the same thing, even if there was causal connection. So even if you say sameness of the person is sameness of the body, you've got to have in that condition about there not being branching. If you had a body that branched, you'd have lost identity. Yeah? Yep. That wouldn't be branching. Well, it wouldn't be psychological branching because there's only one psychological life there going all the way through. Yeah? I'm sorry, you just gave me a case where, like this one. If I understood you, you were just giving me a case where the brain moves from one body into another. Is that right? Yeah, right. So that's not a case where there's branching. Where the original person splits into two or more with no reason to say that one rather than the other is the one that's identical to the original. Yeah. But that's not what you got here. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yep. Right. Yeah. Yes. No, that would not be branching. That's right. Right. The way you just described it, there's a single body going all the way through. Yeah. So if I think of that case in terms of the identity of the person is the identity of the body, there's only one body here. Right? At no point did that branch into two different bodies. But there are two bodies. There are two bodies, yeah. Right. Right. Well, it's not branching. It's not branching physically, because this body didn't split. Sorry. No, it can be either physical or psychological, but it must be one or the other. Right. So the thing about this case is there's no physical branching here. Yeah, is that okay? Yeah. Because there's only one relevant body here. This body is not causally connected to that body. No, because at the later stage, how many minds are there that are causally connected to the earlier mind? That's right. So there's only one set of later memories that are causally connected to the earlier. Yeah? Well, there's the earlier memories and the later memories, yeah, but only one set of later memories that are causally connected to those earlier things. Is that okay? Because there's a mind over here, all right, but it's not causally connected to this one. Because the brain came out of here and went over there, and there's a different brain that went into this one. Okay, you can put it like that, but I agree, you're right. That is how Williams describes it. But the point is that the being driven mad means that there's no causal connection between what's going on in this later mind and what happened earlier. All the memories have been destroyed, so there's nothing over here that was causally connected to what happened here. You see what I mean? So if you look at it at the physical level, there's no physical branching because you don't have two bodies that are both causally connected to what happened to this earlier body. Yeah? And at the psychological level, there's no branching because you don't have two minds that are causally connected to what happened with the earlier mind. That being driven mad thing has just destroyed all the causal connections here. Yeah? Whereas, if you take the pure case of fission, where I just walk forwards and then step out to the left and to the right simultaneously, then you have two bodies, and if someone made a chalk mark on the earlier, if someone made a cut on the earlier body, then that cut will be there on both of these later bodies. Yeah. If I had a traumatic experience in the earlier body, then both of the later bodies will both have the memories of that traumatic experience. So in the fission case, there's both physical and psychological branching. That's really the center of the contrast between this case and the Prince and the Cobbler case. Is that perfectly clear? Yeah. Cloning is different from branching. Yes, cloning. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Psychological. Whoa, that's a great idea. Psychological cloning. Yes. Yeah. That is a great question. That's never occurred to me. How would that go? Yeah, I guess if you split my brain in two, and each half brain got put into a new body, and then each half brain spontaneously regenerated the missing half, something like that, then is that the kind of thing that might give you psychological cloning? Yeah, that would be much more like fission. The important thing, the only reason I resist the cloning thing is that with cloning, there's a very clear answer to the question, which one is the one that was there at the start? Yeah. Whereas in fission cases, there just isn't an answer to that question, which one is the one that was there at the start. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. 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 Multiple personality is really interesting in this context. Let's see. So you've got a single body, and you've got two psychological lives. That's the idea. Yep. And in real cases of multiple personality, the two mental lives, or there might be more, or there might be 4 or 5 mental lives going on, all associated with the same body. In the real cases, they're always quite closely connected. So, some of these personalities know what the other personalities are doing and might disapprove of it or whatever. Some of them are quite unaware of the other personalities. And that brings out something in the complexity of, I've just talked about causal connections between earlier and later. And that's right as a starting point. But just what kind of causal connection? When you think about this kind of case, you think, well, there can be lots of detail to work out in what kind of causal connections are going to matter for it being the same person. But if you take a very pure case where I've just got 2 streams here and neither of them know about the other, you know, when one of them goes to sleep, the other one wakes up and the other way around, yeah. And you keep them separate. Then you could either say the body is the key thing, and so what we have here is one person with 2 personalities, yeah. Or you could say no, the memory is the key thing. So what we have are 2 different people inhabiting the same body. Yeah. I don't quite know what we'd actually say in that kind of case. I suspect we'd take the body to be the basic thing. Yeah. Okay, but they're great cases. They're highly on point, these cases. Okay, yes. That's right. Well, we solved it by brute force. We said, the point of this will become apparent in a second, but we started out defining, thinking about the prince and the cobbler, we started out defining identity in terms of causal connections. Yeah? And that was the thing about the stool or the brain slides or whatever, that the later person is identical to the earlier person if they're causally connected. That's all right? We remember that? Yep. And then the fission cases show that you can have causal connectedness without identity. Yeah? That's all right too? Okay, so the only sensible reaction to that is to say that for identity, what matters is causal continuity without branching. That's identity. So when you say, I care about myself, I've got to look out for myself, I hope it's not me that dies. What you're saying is, I hope there's someone who's causally continuous with me and that there's no branching. Right? That's what it means. That's the analysis. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so because branching can be either physical or
Psychological, yeah.
Like either physical branching or psychological branching, right?
Yeah.
What if I fish and certainly my entire body is duplicated?
Yes.
One of them is kind of like a ruling that doesn't have in mind.
Yeah.
There's going on somewhere. Whereas the other one's like, that was weird.
Yes.
I act as normal.
Yes.
That seems like a case of physical without psychological
Right.
branching. But it doesn't seem that the identity is one of the daughter cells.
Yeah.
The daughter control.
Yeah, there'll be a real good candidate there for the one that was identical to you.
Right.
Yeah, is that the idea? I just agree. I don't mean that physical continuity is the only one that matters.
Sure.
What I mean is, either way, whether you take it to be physical continuity to be the key thing, or the life of the mind to be the key thing, if you're going to talk about identity, you're talking about causal connections with no branching. Yeah. So this is what I mean about the baptism thing and all that we're just trying to spell out, to be very explicit here, what is identity? If I'm going to look out for myself, if I'm going to say a guy's got to look out for himself these days, that's all you can do. If I'm going to say, but will it be me that gets shot, then that's what I'm looking out for. That there'll be someone there who's causally continuous with me, but there'll be no branching. Yep. Sorry, do you go? Yeah. Oh, you don't know what they're going to be thinking about. Yes. Yeah. No. You could be. You could have a later person that was causally connected to you, but that had destroyed many of the mental states that you'd had. Is that the idea? Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Yes, I see. So it could be causally connected moment by moment, but the total upshot might be very different to the original. Is that? Yeah, that's life. I mean, that's part of what people worry about when they think about retirement plans. For example, you think, my God, there I will be in 40 years, this smug Republican who is just the type of person I hate. I'm not going to buy a retirement plan for that guy. You see what I mean? That's a way of challenging the importance of causal continuity. So look what we're doing here. We're saying you start out with this basic motivation that I care about me. I want it to be me. And then we say, well, what does that come to? There's causal continuity and there's branching. And you're saying, but why is causal continuity all that important when I could have causal continuity consistently with having changed all the things that I really value most about myself. If we say the future person matters because they're identical to me, well, what's identity? Identity is causal continuity and there not being any branching. But when you think about it rationally, who cares about branching? Why should you care about branching? Is branching important? This is asking the question, what is it about survival that matters to you? Nobody in their senses should care about branching. Branching is not important. Maybe causal continuity is important. I mean, causal continuity seems like it might matter, although that last comment says even that you might think it doesn't matter. But there's no reason you should care about branching. If branching happens, well, let each live well. You know, why be miserable about it? You shouldn't really care about branching. Branching in itself just doesn't matter. So, if you think about children, one reason people care about their own children is the idea that their children are causally connected to them, right? So if you have one child, you really care about that one because that one is causally connected to you. But then you have two more children. Now there are three children that are all causally connected to you. So you say, well, in that sense, there was branching. But nobody says, well, that's probably a bit strong, but it's very unusual to say, my God, I cared when there was one, but now that there are three, now that branching has happened, I can't care about any of them. Right? They're causally connected to me, but good luck, guys. Bye-bye. Yeah, you don't say that, right? You say the causal connection matters, and whether there was branching is not in itself important. Oh, I was just wondering if a new version of Java was available. Let's see. Okay. So having got to this point, we've got this primal human motivation, the concern for yourself, looking out for yourself, for your own survival. And we've cut off the branching part and we say, but that's not important. But then all that matters now is causal continuity. But now think about what you're saying when you say, I really care about whether it's me. I mean, if you're told there's a fire, only one person can get out of the auditorium alive, and you say, well, by God, I hope that's going to be me. Well, having walked through this exercise, what that means that it's you is that it's causally continuous with you and there'll be no branching. But you don't care about the branching bit, so just pause about the causal continuity bit. There's this current set of perceptions and experiences that you have right now. There's a later person with a set of perceptions and experiences and memories, and you say, boy, I really hope that in the future there's a set of memories that are causally connected to this set of experiences and memories. That's what you're saying when you say, but will it be me that makes it out? But why should you care about that? All this is doing is analyzing what the self is, what you care about when you care about yourself. Well, what you care about is there are all these sets of experiences in the room, and you're saying, I'm going to root for the causal continuity of this one with that one. Well, I once talked to someone a philosopher who really believes this picture of things, and he said, well, it's kind of like rooting for a football team. I mean, everybody gets to root for a football team, right? And the whole point about rooting for a football team is that, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's fundamentally arbitrary. You can root for any team you like. I mean, only someone very superficial and shallow would root for a football team because they thought that's the one that's going to win the most games. You see what I mean? That's the whole poignancy of rooting for a team. You choose your team more or less arbitrarily based on, I don't know, where you grew up or what your best friend roots for or what your brother rooted for or something like that. And you arbitrarily root for that one. So now once we reach this point, you can see that the concern to survive, the concern that it be me, is like that. You're rooting for the causal prolongation of this set of memories, this set of experiences, in this arbitrary way. Parfit sums up the effect of thinking through what matters about identity like this. He said, "We are strongly inclined to believe that our continued existence is a deep further fact, distinct from physical and psychological continuity." So there's something more to it than these causal connections. I see, but there isn't any more to it than these causal connections. When I believed that my existence was such a further fact, I seemed imprisoned in myself. My life seemed like a glass tunnel through which I was moving faster every year, and at the end of which there was darkness. When I changed my view, when I came to realize that what I was rooting for was just the causal prolongation of a particular set of experiences, when I changed my view, the walls of my glass tunnel fell away. I now live in the open air. There is still a difference between my life and the lives of other people, but the difference is less. And on that bombshell, we'll pack it up for today. Okay, thank you guys. Sorry?